Cool. Hello. Hello. Welcome back to another Atomic Castle video. We've got a special guest here today. Ali King. Hello. Say hello.
Hello. I am very special.
You are very special. Ali, would you like to take a second just to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and why you might be here.
I'm Ali King. I am an experienced member of the SVG tournament community to the point where I am the GBHL league coordinator at the moment. I may not be in a week's time. There's elections going on. And I also won the GBHL season for the 2020-2021. And I also tell Lee about how to play dwarves.
The bane of my life. Yeah. So what you're saying there is that you've won your own league.
Oh yeah, I couldn't win the league, so I decided to run it, and then so I could win it. It's pretty much how it worked.
And interestingly, in third place is also Jay, who writes the rules. So between the two of you, you've got kind of the head of the league.
To be fair to Jay, he's getting worse since he started writing the rules. Third place is his worst finish since he's actually started competing.
To be fair, he didn't go to any tournaments this year, did he?
Did 6.
Did you 6 in the end?
Yeah.
I kept looking up and he was only on 1 or 2 for most of the year.
Yeah, no, he had a flurry at the end of this sort of year. Because there's quite a lot more tournaments towards the end of the year because of reasons.
Fair enough. Cool. So we've got a few questions because I asked our little local community if we wanted to ask any questions, but generally we just wanted to have a sit down and chat about all things SBG and what it takes to maybe win the GBHL for any aspiring competitive people out there in the world. So quickly, we've mentioned the GBHL a few times, but what is the GBHL in as few words as possible? Because I'm sure we could talk for hours about it.
The GBHL is basically a league made up of a bunch of SBG tournaments throughout the year to award the best player during the whole season. So
that was
few ways as possible.
Yeah. And in terms of format, so you've got lots of tournaments over the course of the year. Some are ranked higher than others in terms of you've got 100 pointers and 80 pointers. And the 100 pointers are basically your big flagship. Like, what are the rules about them again? Is it like 30?
So GBHL 100, to give it its proper name, because we kind of dropped the point bit because people then started confusing, think it was a event which you could only take 100 point models. But a GBHL 100 offers the maximum amount of points you can get from an event. So if you win the event, you get 100 points towards your league standing. GBHL 80 only gives you 80. So basically, a GBHL 100 will be the more competitive events. So the people who want to try and actually win the league will probably be going to those ones and sort of going more competitive. GBHL 80s they can still be competitive, but they're for more like either the regional leagues or they're a bit more sort of themed or unique events like battle companies or doubles or something like that.
Nice. Way to ruin all the fact that the only ones I've done well in the 80s.
Yeah, I was going to bring up at some point, like, you know, when you did your first one and you won it.
Yeah.
Like, did you? And then you turned up to the other tournaments and then you didn't win.
Yeah.
And Lee did better than you.
I'll be honest. That first one was a complete fluke. We've spoken to
what was it? A Spider Queen and a Goblin Town at a 600 point event or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's a bit power gaming, even if I was going to a 100 point event.
I was trying to work out what to take, and then I was just like, hang on, this is my 450 Goblin Town list that I've been doing okay with. Spider Queen's just under 150 points. Oh, and she can bring a bat. Let's do that. Just chucked it in together, played it once, and went, yeah, that's good, and then went to the event. But I think it's because the pool system really helped. That we're still using because
I enjoyed it because like I didn't go, but I quite like the pool system because it throws all like normal conventions out the window, and I always like doing that at certain events.
I think there was only, like, in fairness to the guys, I think there are a few people that I probably wouldn't have ended up playing later on in the day that I played, where I would have been playing people like David Clubley, for instance, who's a reasonably strong player, but he does come fourth in most events.
Oh yeah, he chokes. Any significant game, he'll lose. Like,
which would have been alright because I've been playing him in the final. but he did have chariots, and I had Goblin Town, so I'm quite glad that we didn't. But you know,
you're just a better player though, so you know.
Well, that's what I heard.
Anyway.
Yeah. With my one like silver trophy sat there on the shelf.
He wishes he could have one silver trophy.
No.
Actually, to be fair, I think he has won a GBHL 80 event now, but it was doubles.
Oh yeah, with his mate, yeah. But you don't get trophies for 4th place. That's a problem. So
as an Arsenal fan, I fully well know that, despite many
I
years
forgot
of
about that. Yeah,
being told that we did.
Got my lampshade up there, big Arsenal lampshade. Got my Arsenal bedding on the. Yeah. So a couple of questions then, but we should probably do some serious chit chat. Yeah, serious chit chat at some points. So I've got a question here which has come down from Curtis, who was with us last night, based out of London. What are, because you've been playing before and post-pandemic, how have events changed over the little gap that we had pre and post-pandemic?
So actually, genuinely quite interesting. I think the average player has gotten either better and or are using better armies than they did before pandemic. So I used to be able to just turn up sort of to an event, and unless I was playing people in the top sort of quarter, it didn't really matter as long as I had a vaguely competitive army, or even in a bad matchup, I could usually fairly certain of a win. Whereas actually post-pandemic, I'm turning up to these events and I'm just looking all the way down to even the bottom table is that's actually a good list, that's a good list, that's a good list. And I'm playing, there's a lot more players who seem to be competitively switched on, I would say, than there were. But and a lot more new faces, which is cool.
I was pleasantly surprised ish at Into the West, where I did start to had a couple of rocky games at the start, and then it all kind of started to unwind, and I ended up down properly at the bottom tables, and I was like, these are still good lists. What are they doing down?
Yeah,
so frustrating, because I was like, I just want to bounce back up. But no, it's good though. It's great for the scene.
Yeah, that's why I needed to win it now. So I can then just retire and then just pretend that I was amazing, even though all these new people are going to come up and probably beat me now.
Well, and the other thing is so the GBHL does the best newcomer as one of its secondary awards. And if you look at how some of the lads in there have performed in the league in general, so is that you've got people like Rowan
May and Ryan Gregory were the top 2 in the end, and there were quite a few others who could have
ended up 5th and 7th in the full standings in their first year, which is pretty impressive. Just turning up and winning big events.
Fun fact, Rowan May is actually the highest ever finished placing best newcomer since it's been awarded. Even more fun fact, and there's a reason I know this, only one person has finished 5th on their debut season.
Who was that, Annie?
There wasn't a best comer award that year, because it was only the second year, I think, of the GBHL. There you go. I got all the stats I do. These the ones which make me look good.
Well, one of the things that someone else has asked, and this might, don't know if this cuts deep to the bone or not, but from looking back, because the GBHL ranking sheet does also have all the historical things, and you've never podiumed before in the league.
No.
According to that. And yet suddenly you've won it.
So genuinely, I've gone to events. So so even before the pandemic, this was going to be the season that I was actually going to try and compete, because I always did reasonably well, but I think apart from my very first season, I'd never been able to go to more than 6 GBHL 100 events in a year. And historically, to podium in the top 3, nearly everyone's always done 9 plus 10 sort of tournaments that you go to, because you your best 4 results, you need to just sort of be maximizing your chances. And so before that, I just either was working at weekends, I couldn't drive, I was at uni and had no money, various reasons, I was never really able to go to as many events as I wanted to. And then this year, or this season, I could drive, I had money, and I wasn't working at weekends anymore. So I was like, oh, I can actually go for it. And then COVID happened, and I was like, and then it started again, and then I could sort of go for it. But yeah, that was the main reason. I always had quite a high podium to tournament event ratio, but I just wasn't going to enough events realistically.
Yeah, fair enough. That's one of the things we've been saying. It's like a local group, is that you kind of have to, you've got to be in it to win it, right? And there's, with the way SBG sets itself up, there's such like matchup roulette and kind of scenarios that just don't work for some people and do for other lists and things like that. And you just got to go to the event and hope you do well, like, and you get the events at full for you.
Is actually why. So one of the things, going off on a slight tangent, that I introduced when I sort of took over league coordinator was the regional leagues, because it basically, you only need to do 3 events for that, and it sort of just meant that people who can afford to like fly up to Stirling, like if you're down south, or like travel around, could actually still compete in something in their area and don't have to massively commit in the same way.
I like them. We've been having a good look at those. It's all right, because I've managed to stick it fairly high on the southern ones. It's all right. I'll take that.
Where did you finish? Or are we coming on to that later?
We're coming on to it later, but you can have a look if you want. It's all right.
Yeah, I do.
It's not too bad. I'll take it. But yeah. So another one I've got on here is with some of the larger SBG events, a lot of the prizes and things that are given out tend to be kind of movie replicas, swords, helmets, cool things like that. Whereas if you look at other systems, they have started moving towards things like cash prizes and things like that now. Is that something you'd ever like to see in SBG, and why?
No. Like, I think the best you could do is like Games Workshop vouchers or whatever, because as soon as you put money at stake, it then changes the dynamic of the game from just being a game.
Yeah.
So it then means like everyone's going to have at some point, even if you're just playing with your mate, that contentious, is that 6 inches, is that like not, like the 50-50 roll-offs and all that stuff. At the end of the day, it's a dice game. If like £1,000 was at stake, it kind of makes everything so much more like controversial or intense, and basically it stops it being a hobby in many ways, and it really only affects the top end of the game, so it doesn't benefit anyone else. So like, I mean, if someone wants to pay me to play SBG, sure, but like I don't really see the benefit, and you're just opening the door for a lot more issues and personality clashes and stuff like that because the stakes are higher.
I'm very glad you said that. Brilliant. And just on the same kind of topic, what's the coolest thing you ever won?
It probably is. So what I won for winning the league was Gimli's axe.
Nice.
I don't actually have it with me because I flew up to Stirling, got awarded it, and I don't think they would have let me on the plane with just because it's genuinely a full-on axe. Like, I was thinking the edge was going to be dulled, like it may be a little bit, but I put my finger on it. I was like, oh no, that's sharp. Like, and it's proper heavy. So yeah, like that's probably my favourite sort of what I call more unique thing that I've won. But I just like trophies. Like, a lot of people like sort of the statues or the stuff like that. I'm not a massive collector of those things, so like they're kind of cool, but like I kind of, the issue I've got with those is if I've won an event, it doesn't actually say I've won the event, whereas the trophy is something that I can like look back on and sort of be like, yeah, I won.
The biggest like bugbear in my life is that I don't have a trophy from Borodor.
Do you not?
No. There was the first, because it was using the pool system thing, I think there wasn't a first place trophy. So what I've got is my voucher that I spent in store that I got for that, and I've got the
just
one
frame
model.
the voucher.
I've got the little thing on the website where it's got the winning lists, and it says first place. I've got that. Sorry, I'll have to just keep sending people out there. But no, I would have loved a little first place trophy. Sam.
Yeah, just get on it. Like,
I might get one myself.
It's actually There's a thing that I didn't like in a lot of the early events. They didn't even do trophies. Sometimes it was just like legless as daggers, or like a Balrog pop was one thing I want. And I was kind of like, it's cool, but I want something to say I'm a winner. And then
Yeah.
like when I'm 80 and like the grandkids or whatever around, I'm like, oh, what's that? And it's like, back in my day, like,
Back in my day, I played with
oh,
toy
I
soldiers.
was really good like, at this thing. I was
That
basically Henry Cavill. Like,
I was about to say that's going to be really cool though. When you've got grandkids, Warhammer's going to be mainstream. It's going to be the biggest thing.
yeah,
It's going to be better than video games.
almost is. Actually, funny story. You may notice I go off on a lot of tangents, but did you see the article with about Warhammer on BBC News
Yeah,
like
about the
last
Graham
week?
Norton thing.
Yeah, which Will Champion ended up like writing a thing for. I just need people to know Harry Parkhill tried phoning me first, but I was at work, so I couldn't answer, and so we had to get Will to do it instead. But, yeah, so basically work cost me my moment of fame and the light. It was originally
Oh,
going to be a Radio 1 interview, but then they decided they wanted to do a written article instead.
fair.
Um,
Probably
but
decided that they didn't want some kind of like nerd on the radio going. "Ah."
no, they decided it was actually interesting enough to put on the actual website rather than just
Okay,
have a radio interview. At least that's what they
well,
told Will.
we we shared that around. It got sent to me by the family group chat. And they're like,
Yeah,
"Oh look, you guys are on the thing." We're like, "Yeah, yeah, we're cool now. Didn't you know?"
yeah, always been cool.
Always been cool. No one knew about it. We're cool to us. It's all right. Um, last thing about like specifically about tournament things. But is there one piece of like kit or gear that's not your like actual army or anything that's just absolutely essential whenever you go to events?
Um, I don't know. To be fair, I'm very good at forgetting a lot of things. So I'm trying to think of the one thing that I always regret forgetting. Um, I mean, dice you can usually buy at events, so not dice. Same with tape measure. Uh, pen and paper is pretty essential, more so than you would think, just to mark down might, will, and fate. Um, but the one that actually is always a pain in the ass if I forget is the match play guide.
Oh yeah.
I lost mine actually at Into the West, so I had to buy another one. And I don't know, I think they've changed actually, because like how did it? Like it's a bit more like a book look now, whereas it was more like a brochure the first one I got. So I
My
don't know
one
if
is
they've
very
actually.
falling apart, to be fair.
Yeah, so I don't know whether they changed it because I remember my old one was falling apart a bit as well. But yeah,
The
probably. Yeah,
Lee's
I'm gonna
actually
go
got your
match
one
play.
from Into the West.
Hmm.
He's got it sealed in a little Ziploc bag, and it just says "Centre Valley King" on it.
Yeah.
He's got it framed.
I'm not surprised.
um, cool. Um, you yourself play lots of sports and stuff, in particular squash,
I do.
and a few other things. I'm assuming you're fairly competitive at that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So I was like county, regional, and sort of top 20 in the UK, sort of when I was a junior for squash.
That's all right, isn't it? It's not
Yeah.
bad.
And honestly, my whole perception of how good I am at squash is completely messed up because I went to uni, and the uni that I went to, we generally had the world number like one and his brother who was like world number five at squash at the uni at the same time. So it's kind of like I'm there going like sort of. I think when I went to uni, I was like 355 in the world, and it's just like just look at those because like, I'm not really that good to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
but, yeah, no, I've always been quite competitive with sports anyway and stuff like that.
And do you think any of that kind of translates to helping you on the tabletop at any events or anything, or is it just is there any like
Definitely.
mind games and stuff you bring across?
So mind games is actually really the main thing. Not necessarily because you're playing mind games, but you can notice the people who've done competitive sport when they're younger. So like World Champion's a good example as well, who won the league the year before I did, because he did a lot of rugby. Is when you're in those pressure moments, sort of like top table to win the event or something like that. If I would. I've done that since I was a kid. It was like there'd be really high intensity sort of rallies in squash or other sports or like um and so like I'm fairly comfortable and used to sort of making fast decisions in a high pressure situation because I've done that for like 10 years already before I even started playing SBG competitively. Whereas people who haven't done that, so I don't think you'll mind me saying this. So Dave Farmer's an example of this. He didn't play much competitive squash when he was younger, and he always used to sort of do well at events, but often when he played a big player in the clutch moments, he would make a silly mistake, or like it just wouldn't go his way, and so he used to like not quite podium as much as maybe you would have thought he would do. Whereas now he's played a lot more high pressure games in those situations, and he's learned that. But I kind of had a head start, whereas David like took a few years to get to that point where he wasn't making those mistakes, in my opinion. Anyway, I doubt I watched this, so I could just like make up what I want.
I was just gonna touch on him anyway, because you mentioned how when you're playing squash, you've always had someone good like alongside you. And David's obviously a fairly solid player himself.
Yeah, he's all right.
Yeah, he's doing all right, isn't he?
Yeah.
Top 5, is he, at the end of the year?
He came 4th.
Yeah, it's not bad, is it? How does that help you? Does that help you with your prep and stuff?
No, we barely ever actually do any practice games. So generally, actually, there was a phase like where, because we grew up like in the same area, so we used to play a lot of Warhammer Fantasy, like in our little group, sort of when we were teenagers. Then I went off to uni one way, he went off to uni another way. Kind of met back like randomly in the summer. I'd gotten into SPG. I kind of introduced him. He went to the odd event that I would go to, sort of vaguely locally. And then I ended up living in London for 6 months, where he lives now. And at that point, we did play quite a bit, sort of do some practice games, which was in the lead up to the start of the most recent season, which I think probably did help him more than me. Like, because I was already had quite a lot of competitive practice under my belt just from playing the guys when I go to events. But so yeah, it probably did. Although this season I haven't played him since tournament started again, unless if it's been in a tournament. So, but we do, like, you talk quite a lot with people and you kind of pick up. But he notices, I think, more than I do what he's learned from me, because he'll always be like, "Oh, I noticed do that," or "I've started doing what you do," or things like that. And I was like, "Oh, cool."
We've had it a lot, because me and Lee play each other an awful lot, at least once a week normally. Well, it's just between ourselves as well. There's an awful lot of things now that we do where it's just little things that you pick up on, and you kind of go, "Oh, I'm going to do this because I know you're about to do that," and he goes, sure.
Yeah, no, actually, that is one thing that generally I would say I'm a bit of an odd player, in sort of I will throw curveballs or do weird tactics and that. And my favorite thing that actually David's ever said is he can't tell when I'm making a mistake now, like, or if it's just some like big brain play he hasn't worked out what it is yet, and so like it just messes with his head, because I could just like be like a complete idiot and do something, and then I'm there going, "Oh crap, I probably should," and he's there going like, just trying to work out where my double bluff is or something like that. But yeah, it's quite funny.
My problem at the minute is that Lee thinks about things faster than I do.
Yeah,
we get to the same conclusion, but he'll be there before me. So we mid-game, and he'll be like, I'll be sat there trying to work something out, and he'll just go, "Well, you just got to do this, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know yet. Hang on, let me have a look." And a couple of minutes later, I'll go, "Yeah, I'm going to do that." It's just
generally, actually, that's one thing that I've talked about with people before. It's like, I think one thing that the top players have is like, I know pretty much what my opponents are going to do 95% of the time. Even when I'm playing like someone like Jay or Will or Jasmine, like, once you played the game enough, I think it's all pretty predictable. Like, and it's kind of like you can narrow it down to they're either going to do this or that, and then you can sort of plan contingencies and that for it.
I tend to find that when I'm down in my playing on the lower tables, and then as I start to come up, I get a bit like, "Ooh, I didn't think of that." Clever.
The aha moment is one of my favorite things in a game. Like, if someone does it to me, like, as in I go, I didn't see that coming. It's one of my favorite things, even if it means that I've lost the game, because it's generally something like I'm there going, I enjoy not knowing, like, and being surprised, sort of.
I had a lovely one of them at the LGT, where I was using my Goblin Town again, and I had he was using fiefdoms, and the goblin captain was calling heroic moves for what he thought was just to be irritated, right? And it's like, well, actually no, because he's out of the way. But then Grinner comes in. Grinner's got strike, and everyone's got no might left. So see you later. And Grinner beat up Imrahil, and it was my favourite little moment I've ever had. I was like, yeah, go on, Grinner. Mighty the throwing weapon as well, just to kill the horse. With his little whip, strength 1 whip.
But one of my favourite ones, which like came up it's just bashing with Grimhammers.
Yeah.
Like no one actually, I swear, ever bashed anything until like I just started using Army 4 because I like them. It's like, what does this look like? What? And then like you just have your hero charge it, like Azog will just charge in on a Grimhammer. I just get lucky and then like win the combat, and then it's basically a 50-50 or my favour against most heroes, and I not keep throwing off your horse, and everyone's like, that didn't go to plan or stuff like that. And
like, my favourite one of them I saw was at my very first like casual event we went to, and the table next to me, some lad had hobbits and he was playing against it was either Angmar or Mordor, but he had a Witch King on Felbeast, and the Hobbit bashed the Witch King off his Felbeast.
Yeah,
I think it was just.
I can one up that at Battle of Unnumbered Tears. I think a Hobbit bashed Treebeard.
Oh,
because it was one which could go two-handed. I think so.
Yeah.
Like literally just the 6 and the 1. But yeah,
that's exactly what he did.
Problem that I've got is now I've like gone on enough of these things and talked about it. Half of my like tricks, like people like know about because like they follow me.
We had exactly that at the Borodor that I went to. The chap Curtis, I ended up playing against him in the final game, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this with a Spider Queen." He was like, "Oh, that's just a trap to do this. I've seen your channel. I know you're gonna do that." And I was like, great, okay, fantastic. I'll do something else then, and I did. But yeah, it was just a bit like, regret doing all of this now. Have you got one in particular that's your like favorite? You know, Harry Potter's got his Expelliarmus. What's the Alley King special?
Heroic March. It sounds weird because it's not actually a trick, but it completely messes people's brains up. Like, so there's like actually there's a couple of examples. So one of the main ones is, say I've got my dwarfs, I'll be moving up, and then I lose priority, and then I'll do a heroic march, and then I'll just literally basically redeploy my whole army to the side or something like that. And like then my opponent's like, oh god, like half their army's now completely out of sort of the way, or like just sometimes even just moving your models just makes people like brain melt because they weren't thinking that was going to happen or prepared for like a redeployment. But on a similar thing, so I was playing, I've forgotten his name. That's really annoying. At war, his name will come back to me in a minute. But there's a situation where I called a heroic march where I didn't have priority, knowing he could charge me. But it was basically they're going, you have to charge me, or I'm going to jump onto your home objective in breakthrough with a whole warband. But then if you charge me because it was a spider, sort of like I'm now just going to swamp that spider and then do a heroic combat and get there anywhere. So it was basically using the heroic march just to force your opponent to react or do something which they weren't planning on doing.
I've used it with Goblin Town to get extra distance to wrap around the back of people as well. So they come in the front, they don't think you can get around the back, but then the heroic march means you can get all around. You don't have to engage still because you can just move around as long as they've only got one rank. And that really throws people off quite nicely.
Right, one cool one that I've actually had with the last couple of events. So I've had a Mordor list with like orcs, but it's got a few Morgul knights in and like the Mouth of Sauron. But I've got an orc drummer, and so the whole army is really quick. But the orc drummer doesn't affect the Black Numenorians because they're not orcs. And so basically, I can do a sound the drum. My army can move up, and then suddenly, like these Morgul knights and the Mouth of Sauron just charge through on people's lines, and then the orcs have just protected their flanks. And they're like, you can't do that. It's like, yeah, I can. They're not orcs, so don't benefit from it. And then they like move. It's like, oh, that was a trick that I wasn't really thinking about when I made the list, but then it kind of you go.
That's a cheeky one. I like that.
Yeah.
Big fan of that. Nice. Shall we have a chat about the league and how it went this year? So we've already kind of touched on it a little bit, but obviously I feel like we had fairly different fortunes. It started off great. I went to my first ever event this year, or my first ever GBHL event this year.
So the league didn't actually start then?
No, the league started in 2020, didn't it?
Yeah.
And I think I actually accidentally went to a GBHL event.
You accidentally did? Well, did you go
I didn't know it was a GBHL. I didn't know
something?
GBHL existed. And I went to this event. So I've got a really low placing from 2020. It was just chilling out on my thing. I think it was one of Dewey's events in Bristol.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I didn't realise you went to that event.
I did. I didn't realise it was a thing at the time. I just kind of turned up. And yeah, it went terribly. But you know, it was just after the Return of the King book had come out, and I played Riders of Theoden All Hero with Gamling twice, and I played Return of the King Legendary Legion twice. It was grim, basically.
Yeah.
And I kind of went, well, events aren't for me. Didn't go back for like 6 months.
Yeah, those two lists are a bit negative play experiences to a certain extent. Right? They're not the worst, but you do go, I can't charge and do anything because you caused terror, or you charge me and kill me before I get to do anything back.
I'd taken a like Harrod infantry bow swarm with Betrayer list as well, so I was like, this is either going to go one way or the other. And it was like, can I kill you all in shooting?
Yeah.
No. Cool, I'm dead. Okay. That was basically it. How did your first event of the year go?
So my first event of the year was Into the West 2020, I think.
Was that the one that Mitty won with his Faramir's Legion?
Yeah, so Matt Light won it with Rangers of Aphelion pre-nerf, and basically just went 7 games for 7 and just smashed
sweaty boy.
I didn't actually play Matt Light. I went, so that army because I kind of, before like the pandemic, I didn't actually have many armies, but I'd pick an army for the year to use.
Yeah.
Which nearly always seem to be dwarves. But so like what I was doing was I was taking Khazad-dûm, and I tend not to like to take sort of conventional armies. I like to find my own sort of like cool way of doing things. And basically, no one had ever really taken Vault Wardens because everyone thought they were a bit naff and a bit expensive. So I was like, I'll take 7 then at 450 points. And it turns out when you take them en masse, they're actually quite good.
They're really irritating.
Yeah, depends. not for the person using it, but
well, yeah.
but yeah, and then I ended up winning 6 games and only lost 1. The one that I lost was actually to Howard shooting spam, and it was basically like, because he gets to reroll all the dice, it like even rerolled the second dice for the 6s by 5s to wound. It's like, didn't go well, but then I won all the others, and so I ended up finishing 2nd with that, which is quite a good start to the season.
Yeah, it's not bad, is it?
No, and then I went to of Dice and Men, which was World Champion event in Ripon. Like their club sort of ran it, but Will was running it that year, which was 1250 points.
So many points.
The largest event points wise that we've ever had in the GBHL. There's one other event which was Escalation, which went up to 1250 points, which I actually won, which was my first ever event win a few years ago. But I turned up to the event with essentially 70 dwarfs led by Durin, like 2 kings and stuff like that. And most people, when they went for the extra 250 points or whatever, just filled it with extra monsters or heroes or stuff like that. I just went with more dwarfs because I've got a lot of the buggers, and it meant that I pretty much outnumbered everyone in all of my games with dwarfs, which is a great position to be in because they're good. I'm almost defense 7 everywhere or higher. It's like, you can't kill me, and suddenly I actually outnumber you. So I won that one. So it's going pretty well. Sort of.
That's not bad, yeah.
Yeah,
good,
like,
decent start.
Yeah, top of the league at that point. Went to the Masters where Jasmine blew me up with her bombs. It obviously, the Masters, like, I generally told Jasmine what I was taking and encouraged her to basically take the most anti my list that she possibly could. I almost won it, but she did blow up my Vault Wardens, but it came down to a dice roll at the end with the blister. But,
I think that was about when I started paying attention to the competitive scene, because didn't you and Jasmine also do interviews with Dewey on the Guardians of Wiltshire thing around that time? And I remember hearing you both kind of talking about it. And being like,
yeah, it was quite good fun. That was me. That was us playing like proper mind games just to like find out. Which, in all honesty, like not the game was fun, but like the pre-game was more fun than the actual game for that. Just because Jasmine, like in the back of her mind, I know had like maybe he's just doing a complete like double bluff and he's not like taking dwarfs at all and just like trying to mess with me. But yeah, and then my last event before COVID became more than just average beer.
In the before times.
Was the GT, which I actually went undefeated at. But so I won my first 4 and then I drew my last 2 games. The last one was against Jay on stream, which but because I drew 2, I only finished 9th, and I didn't podium. Although I did deny Jay winning that event, and Jasmine managed to win it instead. So Jasmine was quite thankful that I denied Jay that victory, I think. And then after that, we went into COVID lockdown.
And then so as we were coming out of COVID, that was when we started like properly planning for events and things. We did a lot of talking about it over lockdown, and we like list theory crafting essentially. And then as things came out, I was like, right, we're gonna smash this. And we saw that first little tournament in London popped up, and I was like, ooh, might go down to that. Couldn't convince anyone to come with me, so I was like, I'm just gonna go down on my own. It's all right. I've got friends in London, so
friends.
Yeah. My old uni housemates all like live in London, so I went down and stayed with them. And had a big old party on the Saturday night.
No, if it was just wine and cheese, it wasn't a party. Topical humour, which will be probably outdated by the time this goes out.
Oh, this will be up tomorrow night, mate. This is we are quick and efficient here.
You are actually.
So yeah, I just was like, like we said at the start, I was we were chatting about lists and stuff, and I was like, oh, I've been using the Goblin Town. I haven't been doing amazing with them, but I'm doing all right, and I'm slowly getting the hang of it. And then I was like, I might just take them to the event and see what happens, and you never know, it might do well. And then I was like, hang on, let's put in the Spider Queen, just see what happens. So I quickly text Sam and was like, here's my proxy Spider Queen that I've made out of a big spider and a base. Rocked up to the event, forgot everything. Like I turned up with no pen and paper and all that jazz. Like I had to go and borrow stuff. I felt like oh god, I don't belong here. And yeah, ended up winning, which is quite nice. I think I won 3 of my games, but like were 10 or 12 nils, which is what carried it through. And they gave you VPs for most sporting, like tournament points.
Happen again.
So I ended up with I think I got 2 most sporting votes from people. I ended up I was one guy at a table and he gave me most sporting. I was like, oh, cheers, mate. Not sure why, but yeah. So that I got a win at my first event, and then I was like, oh, that's it. I've got to win the league now.
Yeah.
I won an 80 and was like, yeah, it's on.
It is weird, because genuinely, I was playing in the league before 80s and 100s were like a difference thing. Like that came in sort of like the 3rd, 4th season of GBHL. Like for you, did you know there was a difference?
I knew there was a difference. I didn't know how different the competitive levels were. I knew if I went to it, it was going to be a competitive event. But now, talking to you guys a lot, we realised that no one really serious takes the 80s all that seriously.
A couple do. There was always a running joke that Jasmine would go around and win all of the 80s because she decided to move on to 100-point events that she was going to win this year instead. But because you did Lair of the Dragon and Into the West, didn't you?
Yes.
Which is essentially the same event, but one was an 80 and one was 100.
Yeah.
Did you actually find it? I've flipped the interview now, but did you actually find it different?
Well, my fortunes were very different at both. So Lair of the Dragon, I came top 20 somewhere. I can't remember where exactly. But Into the West,
just out of about 50 or 30 or 40, whatever. Not out of 20 before someone rips you.
Yeah. So it was like 7 games, and I went either 4 and 3 or 5 and 2. I can't remember what it was exactly, but one of those. And then into the West, I tried to like one of my armies at Lair of Dragon went 4-0, and the other one went 1-2. So I got rid of the one who went 1-2. Like, well, I'm going to win. I'm going to win into the West if I switch that out, and turn up to the West, and it was way harder than I remember, basically. But then, so like Lee went to Lair of Dragon. We were talking about this last night, actually, about his run of games at Lair of Dragon, because he played against
some scrubs, didn't he?
He played you. He played David Farmer twice.
Yeah.
He played Sean
Lang.
Thingy from Bristol.
Is that Lang or Creed?
Lang.
Fiefdoms.
He wasn't using fiefdoms.
Oh no, he was using. Oh god, I remember this when
he was using scouts.
He realised he'd actually won the game, like when you were doing a video
while
recording
we live.
Yeah.
Which was quite fun.
Yeah.
He played you guys. That. Who else he played? He played Callum Edens. So like 5 or 6 of his games were against people who are like top 10 in the GBHL. And he was like, that was quite a lot. And he did quite well at that. And then he came to the West and didn't do as well.
It's quite funny that, because I remember like when I came back, like the event started again. My first 2 tournaments back was like a Bristol 80 and the Lair of the Dragon, and like I mean, I did all right. Like, I finished 6th at Bristol, and I did actually finish 3rd at Lair of the Dragon. But at the end of day 1 Lair of the Dragon, I'd lost 2 and I'd won 2, which was basically my worst first day at an event for a long time. And I was like having a massive crisis. I was just like, am I just not very good at this game anymore? Like, I'd been like top of the league like before, and it's like I've just forgotten how to play this. It was just like, it's awful. And then I went and like won like my remaining games and managed to sneak into 3rd, and then like we'll get on to sort of how the rest of the year went afterwards. But I generally was there like going, am I not actually that good at this game?
Well, I mean, you managed to lose to Lee, which he doesn't stop talking about.
But just to reaffirm, I did actually finish above him in that event.
Yeah, but don't tell him that because he's so proud of himself.
Yeah, I know. What was even funnier is because I'm pretty sure he's gone into it. It's like generally he asked me like for some list advice, like this is the list that I've take before, like it's pretty good, like, and then probably do quite well. I was like, oh yeah. It was similar to what he had anyway, and then I got drawn against him, and then like it just went terribly. Like it was the first time I'd ever used Theodred's guard, and like it just did not go well.
Yeah, we spent the card journey up talking about how it was great because he's got your list, but you've helped him build, and then you're going to learn how to use it by playing against you. It's going to be lovely. And then we got there, and he like managed to fluke a win. I
wouldn't even say it was fluke, to be honest. It generally.
Please tell him it was a fluke.
I didn't play the game very well, and it was kind of a list that I wasn't familiar with, and it was favourable matchup for him in the snow. But he kind of like he wouldn't have won it if he didn't have some like ability to try and balance, like not trying to blow too much smoke up his arse. And like
I did teach him everything he knows though, so it's all right. So he hadn't played. He used to play SPG back when it was Return of the King, I think it was. And then since he only came back into the game kind of 12 months ago, if that, like just before pandemic happened, we were like trying to teach him how to play the game, and then it's only like post then that he's actually started trying to like we joke that he hasn't read the rule book still, but that's because he still doesn't know how half the game works. He just kind of plonks some dwarfs on the table and wins, and it's really irritating because like, but he's getting there. He's getting there. He's going to be good. He is a very good X-Wing player, bless him. Yeah. So
right, I am going to quickly have to pause because someone's knocking on my door.
That's all right. I'm going to sit here and entertain the crowd for a bit. But yeah, that's all right. I'm going to actually pause the video. Yeah, I think that's back. I think we're back. I think I've finessed it.
I had another busy thing that people wanted me to do interviews for. I'm in high demand, obviously.
Is actually.
No, it was literally just basically my mum going like, I need you to sort this out, blah blah blah, like Christmas, blah blah blah. But
Lee has just sent a message in while that was happening though. He sent a question directly for you on the topic. So you often use dwarf armies. he refers to as Mr. Dwarf sometimes. It's very cute. But
yes, I just call him a dwarf. Like,
how do you cope with things like destroy the supplies, which are very movement heavy, as and dwarf army?
I just win. No. So it depends. So part of the reason why I actually prefer Army of Thor and Khazad-dûm to like Iron Hills, talking pure Iron Hills specifically, is you want to get as many numbers as possible because it just makes those objective movements nice easier, because it doesn't matter if you're not quick if you've got enough models to be everywhere anyway. But it's knowing what you're capable of. So in Destroy the Supplies at low points, for example, where you can't necessarily have the models, I know that I'm probably going to end up either having to sacrifice burning one of my own objectives, which is fine, but I need to know that I have to achieve another 2 objectives or something like that. So making sure I don't lose any other ones, and like I do break them and kill their general to like make up that deficit or something like that. It's kind of very situational, but it's essentially going, I may not be able to win this 12-0, but I know how I can win it 3-2 or something like that, and focusing on that kind of thing. So just accept where the limitations really of the army and work out where you can win.
Nice. Good. I will not tell him that, so
Cool.
he does not win them.
Yeah, we'll ban him from your YouTube account so he can't view the videos and stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, talking about like on another tangent, like so many people like in the second half of the season like would play me and then like or like were asking for advice and stuff like that. And like there was a couple of times where one of them, the guy I beat, and I was like, oh, I wouldn't use Frangel like this, I would do it like that, because I basically baited him in. And he came up to me at the end of the day 2 and go like, oh, thanks for advice, it actually worked really well, I did it, and I won all of my games like day 2. And I was like, crap, you're gonna finish above me. And I'm just like, and then like Ryan Gregory as well, like like he beat me in the last game we played, because he's like, oh, I remember like you telling me not to do all that stuff because you'll do that, and then I end up winning. And it's just like, I should stop telling people how to play this game. It's like Lee, I gave advice and he beat me as well, so like it's just like
that just a quick like that's reminded me of something I was going to talk about earlier. You were saying about how the general population seems to have just got a little bit better across the board. 12 months or so ago, when we first like ventured into the YouTube world, there was no kind of SBG focused. There was a couple, but we couldn't find many SBG focused like channels around, or there are a couple of podcasts and things that have been going for years now, but like the Green Dragon and people like that. But there weren't that many like YouTube channels,
like resources and stuff like that.
Like you had the GBHL ones, but they're all quite outdated now, things like that. Do you think that has changed anything at all? Because there's now quite a few popping up, and there's a few people like some of the better players have some as well.
I don't know. Honestly, I think the main thing is because Games Workshop are openly supporting the game again, as in like models and that are coming out, and it means that you're getting the more what I call casual Tolkien fans coming into the game. So by that I mean like you're getting more people who are playing the game for the game rather than playing the game for just the theme. So for a long time there were competitive players, but the majority of people in the UK anyway who'd been playing the game in the dark years, as we'll call it, like were doing it because they really loved the background on that, so they were often be handicapping themselves with like rubbish lists, or like they were literally just there because it was the only way you could play games. So it's like I didn't, like for a long time, and even now I pretty much only ever play games at tournaments and events, like because I don't have many people locally that I can play with or time or stuff like that. And that was the main reason I started going to events, but because I'm a competitive person I kind of then got into the competitive side of it. Whereas now I think you've got people who are war gamers first almost and are interested in the game itself coming into it.
We've definitely seen a massive jump in our like local community, people coming across from things like 40k and Sigma and other systems like that, who are coming in, and they just look at it in a completely different way to how
Yeah.
So I've looked at it in the past, and they kind of go, "Oh yeah, but I can just do this, and that's that, and that's the same as this." And yeah, this all works. And then suddenly they're at the top of events, and you go, no, "It's your first time here, damn it!" Like,
So so as a bit of a panic cleanser, just before sort of like lockdown, I did a couple of AOS events, and like genuinely I play it like maybe a couple of times a year, but I went and I ended up doing better than everyone in my wargaming event at 100. So there's like a big one called Blackout, which is hosted in Cardiff as well, and I finished in the top 10, and it was my first ever event. I like lost first game and was like, oh, that's how you play the game. And then I went and won all the others, and like my mates came up to me like at the end going like, you've actually beaten like some like I think it was like one of the ETC players or something like that, and I just like had no idea. And I think I was accidentally winding him up because I was just like having to double check like the rules on everything, because I was just like, what's that do, what's that do, what's that do? But once you're kind of good at wargaming, because the way I won it was just like, oh, that's an objective. If I've got more models there than you do, I get that objective. And Lord of the Rings is very much like that. So I was just like, I was just playing winning the objectives and just ignoring the armies to a certain extent, because I have no, and that's why I did well at those tournaments, even though I didn't really know the game very well.
that's my Sigmar army just there.
I don't know.
Lizard men.
Mine's hidden behind all of the books. So I got Skaven from back.
Oh no, you don't.
But this was back in one, and I've also got Fire Slayers.
The only reason I say that is because Leah's also got Skaven.
But actually, if anyone's ever like bothered to look, my GBHL number is 13, which if you're a Skaven player, there is a reason for that.
That's my 40k army there.
See, I've got like 40k just like from, but I've never really gotten into it properly.
I was playing it a fair bit, and it's all right casually, I think. And then I went to some big like 40k tournament and came dead last, and was just like, I'm just not having fun. I played against the exact same like army 3 times, and it's just like, it just wins the game. And there's people doing stuff like, I don't even know that's a thing you can do, and they're like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's in this rule book and this book, and there's this add-on book that I can get this rule from there. And
that's the thing that really annoyed me, even like with Age of Sigmar. I was just like, they're going like, I turned up with so I played Warhammer Fantasy back in it. I turned up to these events with basically my Warhammer Fantasy army, going, this is what I imagine the army should look like, and then I'm playing people who've got like armies which are 1/10 of the size, but it's got like 10 different rules which are stacking onto like make this super killy unit. I'm just like, what?
Well, that first event I went to, where I first encountered. That was the first time I saw Legendary Legions, and I was like, "There's add-on books. Oh no, it's 40k all over again."
So fortunately, it's not quite that bad, but I do have an issue. So when I use my Theurge's Guard, it's my biggest bugbear at the moment. For me to have all of the books to go to an event, I need the armies of so rules manual and match play guide, and then I need armies of Lord of the Rings to have like just the Rohan basic rules. I then need War in Rohan to have the Legion rules, and then I also need Gundor at War just to get Elfhelm's profile. And it's just like they're going, I've got 5 hardback books, and it's just like, I really wish like when they had a Legendary Legion, they just put all of the profiles that you would need in that book.
There's so many empty pages in some of these books that you just don't need. Like, just fill it up a little bit. But then I guess they've got the problem where they don't sell the main rule book. There, it's that whole.
You don't even need to do the points. I just want the, but like if the list is in that book, I want the profiles for that list, because
that's why I've got one of my proudest little like hobby things. I've got every single profile card. I've managed to acquire them all over the years, so that's all right. I've got all of them now.
See, I'm not a fan of profile cards because I just forget and lose them and damage them and stuff like that.
I like having. I'm one of those people when I play a game. I like having like all the cards laid out to the side. I've got my dice neatly arranged. I'm like everything sorted. I've got everything written down.
See, I like doing that in theory, but in practicality, I never end up doing that. It's like
by the end of the game, the stuff's just everywhere. But
yeah, like some people mark down every wound that you do towards break count and stuff like that. I know Jay's like one of those people. I just forget to like, and if anything, it like holds me back. The only time I do it is when it actually matters in Lords of Battle. But like it's just I just get distracted by shiny dice and models and stuff like that.
Or talking about completely different games when we should have been talking about
Yeah.
the post-COVID times.
Yeah. So
So
actually, during lockdown, just I like, because I had nothing better to do, I painted like 5 or 6 new armies, and like I think I painted 350 models in the year. So suddenly coming into post lockdown, I had a whole bunch of new armies to use, which was the reason why I then started using Theatrids Guard.
the vast majority of my models were painted during lockdown. I just kept, it was like an army month. I had COVID in January, very, very mildly. Like I was out for like 2 days and I was just sat in quarantine bored. I would also add Lee gave it to me. And I painted
Stop
4.
kissing each other so much.
It's just when you're there, when you're the intimacy of the game.
To be fair, I was thinking like the height difference then, and so, but it's a family show.
It's a family show. But yeah, I did 4 full armies of almost 1,000 points in that 2-week span. So I was just sat here with the desk and some movies and just had a great time.
So I was working in track and trace. So basically, I would be doing this with the headphones on. But during an actual lockdown, it would be really dead because no one's in contact with each other.
Yeah.
So it was just literally there. I was just painting, and in my head, I was getting paid to paint. So thank you, taxpayer.
Are you one of the people that called me when I had COVID and said, "Have you been out and seen anyone?" I went, "No, because I've got COVID, so I'm isolating."
Yeah, like I would have been one of those people, or like pretty much. Like it's fun.
Yeah.
It's like phoning up some like angry people because
I got a job down Tesco doing delivery driving. That was the best job ever because I got all the evening shifts. And most of the time we finished at least 2 hours before our shift finished. Because you rang people up. Yeah. You could ring people up and say, "Excuse me, you're in for the 8 till 10 slot, but I can deliver it earlier if you'd like." They go, "Yes, I would like that."
See, if I ever get that phone now, I'll be like, "No, I want it delivered at 9:59, please."
There was one lass who did that, and it's because she was a nurse and she was like on the late shift. She's like, "No, I've deliberately booked it late, so you come late." I was like, "Okay, cool. That's fine. I'll sit in a lay-by for 2 hours." But yeah, first tournament back, I rocked up. I won it. It was great. It was only an 80-pointer though, so it's not really count.
But all events were 80-pointers at that point, so.
Oh yeah, true. They were. And then I
clearly
had
you'd have won it if it was a 100-pointer anyway.
Yeah. I had the 2 COVID the 2 Cardiff ones coming up afterwards. And they were all in like fairly quick succession. It was like a 2-month scan, I think it was, where it's like 3 or 4 events I booked in. I was like, if I win the first or do well at the first one, I'm gonna like try the next couple. If I don't do well at the first one, that's it. I'll just go along for funsies. And then I rocked up and won the first one. I was like, oh damn it, I've got to try. Went to Lair of the Dragon, did okay, not great, but okay. And I was like, all right, cool, I can fix that and go better at Into the West. And then it just all went wrong. I missed my alarm in the morning, was late to get to Lee to drive us up, and it just all like spiraled down from there. Played Eden's first game, had a lovely time, and it was just down. Where's your couple of first ones back?
Well, so my first one back was a Bristol event at Dooran, which was meant to be a 100-pointer. But then, because like how things happen, it ended up only being an 80-pointer with a like pseudopod system. And I've managed to qualify for the top group, even though I lost one of my games. And then like it's just one of those days on day 2 where I don't think I won any of the games. I think I drew 1 and then lost 2, and it was just a case of bad luck and against competent enough players where they could actually make it hurt. But so I ended up finishing 6th at that event, but then that was because I couldn't finish lower than 6th.
That was the one that was like, I think that was a week before Barrador. And I was on for both of them, and I had to drop out of the Bristol one like last minute. Otherwise, I'd be going to both of them as well.
So yeah, I did that one. Like as an 8-point, it didn't really matter sort of like to me, but it was kind of like, yay, we get to play games again. And then we went to what was originally going to be Into the West, but then because that couldn't be a 100-pointer and they had a maximum capacity, became Lair of the Dragon. And I took Theatrids Guard for the first time, which was one of my new lockdown armies. Day 1 didn't go great, lost to like some annoying hobbit. And then like so I was like 2 for 2 day 1, and that was when I was having my like, am I just crap at this game? And then I won all three games day 2, and I got a podium because I knew the format of the event. I knew how important secret missions were, so I'd made sure I think I got like 6 out of the 7 or 7 out of the 7 throughout the tournament, which basically pushed me up, even though I was on 5 and 2, like Lee was, for example. It gave me the extra TPs to get into 3rd.
Yeah.
But so I did that, and then I had the first 100-point event up in Preston, which is quite a trek for me, and it was one that I'd booked in with the idea I'm competing for the league like before, so I just went and booked all the 100-pointers, and that if I could go, pretty much, just so I had a ticket, because they can sell out quite quick. Took Theodred's Guard, and I won the weekend pretty comfortably, and like I was like, oh yeah, I do know how to SPG. This is fine. Like, but yeah, because I won that event. It wasn't necessarily the strongest field in the world. Like, there was a lot of competent players, but a lot of the big guns weren't necessarily there. But I did win it, and it kind of was like, oh yeah, this like. I can SPG again. I've remembered how to tournament and stuff. And then I went to Into the West, and I went 7 for 7 at Into the West as well. So I went from like not sure if I knew how to play SPG. I won with Theodred's Guard. I then went and won like something like 15 games in a row, and I haven't actually used them since Into the West. But it kind of is that whole thing, which I know you've talked about before. Is like I just learned the list and sort of got used to it, and like I slightly tweaked it when I went to Into the West, so it was a bit better. And so
I used Goblin Town for the first time at like friendly local event that we ran.
Yeah.
And I went 0 and 4 at the event.
Yeah.
And got slapped around basically the entire time. And I was like, Goblin Town are awful. I played a couple more games with them. I won one and then got slapped around by like an all terrorist. So everyone on the SWMG channel, I'm having such a terrible time in that game because like all terrorists.
Terrible.
Oh dear. And then it was just, I was like, I'm never going to use them again. I'm going to throw them in a bin. Like, I sold half the army. I was like, I'm done with it. And then I used them again. I was like, oh, that's how it works. And then I won and I won and I won. And I won like 4 or 5 games in a row with them. I was like, I see. This is how the list works.
I think SBG armies, out of all, like, they have a more of a learning curve, especially when they're a bit different. So the reason why not that many people do well with dwarfs, because you have to use them differently to most armies. Goblin Town's a bit different as well because you're so squishy, but there's bajillions of you. It's like a good player can pick an army up and do all right with it, but even the best players, like, they have their army, which is the one which they are significantly better with, not because that army is better, but because they've used it more.
I recently I picked back up my old fiefdoms army, which used to be like, it was my kind of my good army for years, like back when I was first started playing ages ago. And then I just picked it up and was like, let's throw this together, and went and won quite comfortably. I was like, oh yeah, fiefdoms, I remember you. It's like, hello, my little old friend. I missed you so much. You just remembered. It's like, oh, this is this, this is this, this is this, and now I've won. Happy days.
Yeah. So thinking about, so we're now going into October. I'm firmly in control of the league. I've got 3 wins and 1 second place, which would have won me the league in, I think, all but one of the previous seasons. And so it was then like really weird because I had all of these tournaments booked to go to, but I kind of didn't need to do well. Like, it was there going, like, I was so far ahead that I think everyone but Jasmine had to win 3 events to overtake me out of like 6 remaining events.
Because we had the LGT then, which you didn't bother. That's only an 80-pointer.
Yeah, I was away on holiday in Scotland. That's why I didn't actually go to that.
Yeah.
I also heard you and Lee were going.
Lee didn't come.
Did he not?
No.
I may have gone then.
Yeah, London's big and scary, is what he said. There's too many city folk there. He doesn't like it. So yeah, he came down. Sorry if you live in London. Anyone, but that's just,
I used to live in Putney. Like, I mean, it's nice for like a few months, but because it's like central London. It's just like after all, it's just like I feel like I have to spend £5 just to leave my door. Like
Yeah.
that's how sort of expensive it is.
And that went okay, I guess. I got some wins and some losses. I think it was like 4 and 3 or 5 and 2 again. Like it's solid, but nothing to write home about. And yeah, it was just all right. It was a nice weekend though, lovely time. Interesting event because you've always got all the 40k people there as well. So the vibe was a bit off. Like it felt like it was competitive because the 40k event was really competitive.
Yeah.
And it kind of, the whole atmosphere in the room was a bit like serious. Whereas when you go to some of the like the standard SBG ones, it's all very like chilled out. Everyone's chatting and kind of just going up to tables and chatting and stuff. And
see, I know with the LGT, because you do get like also people who have no idea what a GBHL is. Like they'll turn up and there'll be like a 40k competitive player and they'll be playing SBG, and they don't realise that it's a pretty like chilled event, like as in being an 80 pointer. It's sort of like like sort of none of like the top players are going or taking it completely seriously, like as in win at all costs kind of thing, which I haven't been, but like feedback is it gives it like kind of like a weird sort of like, you get some people who don't know that, like because it's got the London GT brand, they think it's like the biggest SVG tournament in terms of competition, but it's not.
There were there's a little group of guys there who were all 40k players who basically had seen, I was playing against one, he's chatting to him, and he's like, he'd been coming to LGT for 40k for a while. He'd seen the SVG event was like smaller and chatted to people, and he was like, you all seem really nice and friendly, so he's just going to turn up and smash her. And he played like 2 or 3 games, and then it all capitulated for him in day 2, and he left before the game. Like he left halfway through day 2 because as soon as he lost a couple of games, like I say, I'm out and go home.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing that they do in their game system. As soon as you start losing, you just leave.
Okay, I've never understood that. Like, especially like for me, like I don't know, like the more I'm losing in a game, in my head, I don't know whether it's the same as I'm there going, the more epic this comeback is gonna be.
Yeah.
Like, as in the more I can wind you up, like going like, you know how you were absolutely battering me for like an hour in that game, and then somehow like this just one dwarf went and killed everyone, like. I don't know. I'm just saying, and you play to the end. Like I don't mind losing. Like it's kind of just sort of. I just don't get that mindset. I've paid for 6 games. I want to play all of them.
Yeah, I had a game against Nicky Mulland, and I had just Aragorn LSR left against basically his entire army. It all gone terribly wrong, and there were about 5 turns because it was ends on a 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Where I would have won the game with just LSR left on the table. And I was like, go on, but it didn't happen for me. But that would have been glorious.
Yeah. That is one of those things people don't realise about SVG is like you can lose generally the battle, but that will make you win the game. And when you learn that in a tournament play is when you actually start doing well at tournaments.
few games I was really bad at. Like I started losing. I was like, cool, well I'm out, and then realised that the comebacks are always fantastic. If you weren't paying attention, Charlie Patino has come on for his debut and scored a goal.
No,
against Sunderland.
I haven't.
Well,
I didn't actually have it on the other screen, but
yeah. So that was that, and then what was next? Was it Lords of the Imps next? Was that the next big one?
Yeah, so there was my next event anyway. There was
mine too, so it's all right.
Yeah, so like no one cares about anyone else's event.
Yeah.
If we weren't there, it probably wasn't important.
No, exactly.
But, yeah, so Lord of the Imps was interesting in terms of, for me, from a competitive point of view. Like I had one of those tournaments where I got bad luck and then a terrible draw, and then it was kind of like it was the first time ever I've been in a situation where, for league standing wise, because I never used to be able to go to that many events, so I was always like could improve, and it was like as soon as I lost a game, it was just like, well, I'm probably not going to win this event now, so like I can just like take it easy. Which was a bit weird, like because the goal was the league. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I probably enjoyed the night out too much as well. But
I think there were a few of you who did, yeah.
It's mainly just me and James Gilway, to be honest, and Harry Parkhill,
and Harry,
and Nathan as well, like joined us out. But yeah,
Yeah, I had the opposite where I didn't just win my first couple of games, but I won them quite convincingly and ended up on the top table for I think top table games 3 and 4 I was on.
Mm.
And it got to that game 4 and I could have won that one as well on those few like dice rolls. It's like, this is going alarmingly well. And then day 2 came around. I don't know what happened, but I lost my first 2 games day 2, and then spanked the guy I had last. Bless him, because I was a bit annoyed. So I was like, I'm just gonna vent on you. But yeah, so I ended up at like 4 and 3 again.
Yeah.
But it almost happened again. I was like, I've almost accidentally won this. This is great. And then day 2 came around and just no, absolutely not. I was really tired.
Yeah, so I remember like because Lincoln's quite far to drive for me. I imagine it's for you as well.
4 hours.
Yeah, that's the same here. And like, bearing in mind, I didn't get back until 5 in the morning on the Sunday morning in the end. Like, and then I had to drive back that night. I was just like,
I decided I was going the week, like a couple of days before. So I was on holiday, basically, and it was the day after my holiday. So I came back from holiday, like dropped my stuff, and then went. And I didn't realize that I got the booking date wrong on a holiday, and I thought I was there until Sunday, but I was there till Friday. So I, like last minute, just text Harry, was like, "You got any dropouts or anything?" And he was like, "Actually, I do. Yeah." I was just about to put a message out and say, "I need one more person." So I did that, threw a list together like last minute, and that one had interesting listings, though, didn't it? Because your leader died on day 1.
It was my favourite rules pack I've had in like ages because kind of it was a bit different. So yeah, it was like your leader died day 1 and your second in command became a leader, and then you like replaced the warband and all that. But you also knew the scenarios, so it was like you could then build for the scenarios and like
which I tried to do, and I think by trying to do that I messed up my day 2.
Yeah.
Because what I'd done was I took Rohan with Theoden and Dernhelm, and then a load of Royal Guard, and LSR as my leader.
Yeah.
No, LSR was my lieutenant, and Aragorn was Theoden was my leader.
Okay.
So Theoden died, and Aomer went back in. So like I still got 2 big heroes. We've got LSR there as well, but LSR's then my leader because we had like contest champions and stuff for the second day.
Yeah.
But it meant I lost Theoden. And I forgot just how much of the Rohan list needs Theoden. So I should have probably just dropped out Theoden and brought in like Aomer and had Aomer as a big hitter or something.
Yeah. So I remember I went pretty Femi. It was competitive at Femi that event because I had my army of 4.2, like as in the new one that I built over lockdown. So like it was like Battle of Ananzibur or Dimmelgate or whatever you want to call it. So it was like Dane, Fror, and I can't remember, like there's another hero, like possibly just a captain. No, young Dwalin, day 1, and then Fror dies as he does, and then like basically Frayne stepped in like day 2, and it kind of worked out that it should have been pretty competitive for the Bulls pack as well. But it was kind of like an actual themed list which was competitive.
I started it with Femi intentions, and it was like Theoden, Aragorn, and it was meant to be Gamling as well coming down the thing, and then I didn't get my Gamling painted in time, so I realised my Gamling wasn't painted, and then went, well, I'll put Dernhelm in instead because she's just good, isn't she? And then I was like, actually, I've got Aragorn and a banner bearer now that I've dropped Gamling for the same points. I could just have LSR instead, and he is a banner. So I did that, and then I was like, oh, well, now it's not Femi anymore, but you know. That was the intention. It was meant to be Femi. Yeah. So neither of us won that, so we can just skip straight past there.
So Dave Farmer won that event, which at the time wasn't going to be significant to me. I mean, it still turned out it wasn't. But like, generally, this was the thing, like, because the only person or 2 people who realistically could catch me were Jasmine and Jay, because Jay had just won a 100-pointer. Well, like it was one of those events that we don't care about because no one went to, but they would still have to win another 200-pointers. Dave Farmer had a couple of podiums, but he hadn't won anything at that point. So like he'd won the event, and it was like, cool, like I get to drive him home happy, as opposed to like in a couple of other events where I spanked his ass in the last game and he missed out on a podium one time, and it's just like, well, this is now awkward. But yeah, so there's that. Did you do any event after that, or?
After Imps, I went to a War in Reading,
Oh yeah,
but not.
so I had unnumbered tiers before War,
Yeah.
which was the Edville Owen Wright 100-point that they ran. It was 800 points, and I generally just took the event to trial out my Mordor army. Never used it before. I made a couple of mistakes, which is what cost me the games. And like I finished about 10th, I don't know. But it was more me just going to see how the army did. And then Jasmine won that event, which basically meant Jay couldn't win the league, so he was no longer a threat, but also put Jasmine as a potential threat to overtake me in the league. And then before we got to War, there was their scouring of Cheshire.
Scouring of Cheshire.
Where Jay, David, and Jasmine all were going. And at this point, I think it was basically for me, if none of them podiumed, it was great. But as long as Jay and Jasmine didn't win, that was super great for me, because I think it was Jasmine's last event that she was going to be going to. So if she didn't win it, she couldn't like beat me. If Jay didn't win it because he only had one extra event left, which was the finale, he couldn't beat me. And at the time, like, Farmer needed to win another 2 events, I think, to jump me. So it was basically David ended up winning it, which was then good. And then I went to War and sort of going like, I kind of still vaguely have to be kind of competitive, but it's not really. It doesn't really matter. It's basically I spent the whole entire second half of the season going. It all depends on what everyone else does more than what I do.
Yeah.
And then Dave Farmer like drew his first game against Jaffrey Cromwell, who's a really good player from Poland, and it's kind of like, oh, I can relax a little bit, to be honest now. And then sort of.
So what you're saying is, for the last couple of events, your sole purpose was to just ruin Dave Farmer's day.
Not just his, but no, but it was weird, like going into the last. So yeah, we'll get onto that, I suppose, at the end. But like, yeah, so I went to War. I was using my Mordor at small points and dwarfs because it was good and evil. And I had one of those events where I didn't actually lose a game, but I drew my last 2, and it was kind of it was me playing, I would say, properly, where but I just was unlucky because I couldn't get the big wins, because a bit like I was on about with dwarfs earlier, like I just wasn't getting the right matchups or the scenarios, because there was a major win factor in War to enable me to get the major win, because I wasn't quite getting the luck I needed. So even though I didn't lose and I won 4 and drew 2, it meant that I wasn't realistically in contention for podium even at the end. I was sort of playing for the 4th, 5th David Clubley places.
Yeah. I got to go there. I was meant to be booked in. I was booked in to go, and then because we've got like our own business, one of my members of staff would cover me for Saturday, and then she got ill, so I had to cover her. So I couldn't go, but only for the Saturday. But I could go for the Sunday. And Clubby said he had someone who dropped out for the Sunday, but not the Saturday. So I was like, cool, we'll just split it. So we went on anyway and kind of acted as ringers. And I was going to take my Goblin Town and my fiefdoms, because I was going to, for unnumbered tiers, I was meant to be going to that as well.
Oh, were you?
And I was going to be taking my fiefdoms, but again, I had to drop out of that like fairly.
Were you just picking the events you saw my name down at? And was like, I'll do that one. I'll do that one.
No, I was just picking basically, I was picking anything, everything I could towards the end of the year, because I was like trying. So Zahir, who is also from London, we met at Borodor, we're quite friendly, but he was like one space below me in the league, and then one space above me, and it was kind of like we were flip flopping all the way through. I was like, I can't let him win. So I was trying really hard to get like a couple more points just to beat him, just as like a little like. Yeah, it might as well. Like, it matters to us.
Friendly competition.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of those little things. Like, so I had it with Farmer for ages, where I like to used to remind him he never finished above me in a GBHL event, and the only events he ever won were the ones which I ran or wasn't playing at. And then at the GT, like in 2020, he finished above me. But weirdly, we never played each other at an event. And then after lockdown, I played him. Basically, he only lost to 3 people since the end of lockdown at GBHL events, and I got over 50% of his losses were to me. I never lost to him like since then. Like
And
I
at
beat him
least
3
two of
times in
them were
duel.
Lee as well, I think.
Yeah, so this is a GBHL 100 event.
Oh yeah, not yeah.
Yeah,
You said
this is
GBHL.
what I mean. Like it generally, in terms
You
of
just
like
80s just don't matter to you.
yeah.
You
So
scrubs. Yeah.
my win percentage, because I got bored and worked out at work the other day because I work really hard, like is significantly lower at 80-point events than it is at 100-point events. So like I lose more games at GBHL 80s than I do at 100s.
We were working out the other day. I worked out that mine is significantly higher in London than anywhere else in the thing, and it's really bad in Cardiff.
Yeah.
For some reason, I just hate Cardiff, but London, great. I don't know if it's just the local crews over there, you know.
Yeah, could be the low points actually.
Yeah, I think it's the low points because the London ones are 600 and escalation, whereas the Cardiff ones are 450, and I've never liked 450.
So tell one of my favorite highlights like of the year, or should we do that at the end?
Let's do it at the end. Let's save that. So we did war. I took Golden Town and Fiefdoms and then played with my Fiefdoms all 3 games because I was ringering.
Yeah.
But I won 2 and lost 1, so I ended up 4-2 because the guy before me went 2-1.
Yeah, so you did it right actually.
Yeah, I mean that's always the aim, isn't it? Positive thing.
Yeah, better than average.
Better than average. Yeah, better than average. I'll take that. Better than some of the guys that we know who went to actually play the whole event. So I'll take that. I'll hang that over their heads.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was all right. And then it was your league finale. Next.
So we didn't like those of us in the knew that I had won the league. Because Jasmine couldn't go to league finale and she was the only person who could possibly have a chance of jumping at the time. But we didn't want to make that public knowledge just because like build up suspense, like Harry Parkhill, like shenanigans, like with the PR magic. But yeah, so I literally
a lot of us also knew. Don't worry.
Yeah. So I got on with the Scots. I don't think you've ever met them because they used to come down to Cardiff a lot and travel and that. And I was always like, I will go to a Stirling one year, but because I actually have to fly up there, it's a bit impractical. But I was like, I'll go up like this year, league finale, take a picture with my axe, and like come back. But yeah, so in terms of me being competitive at the event, I took competitive lists, but it was full on like. So I arrived at the hotel in Stirling at 11:30. I text Dave Reed, who was organising it, going, "Are you guys still at the pub?" And they were like, "Yeah, it shuts at 1." And then I was like, "Cool, I'll be there soon." Like there weren't any Ubers and that. It was a half an hour walk or about a 15-minute run. So I ran to the pub, basically got given like drinks, necked it, and then next thing I know, me about 4 of us ended up going on a night out until 5 in the morning, which was the messiest night out I've done since lockdown. And basically, day 1 was a bit of a write-off. Like I still won like I still won 2 games and drew 1 and lost 1, but it was just generally like I just didn't care. It was, I was playing like Calman in one game, and it was like instead of like deploying at the back and then moving towards each other like we're meant to, it was just like, oh, let's just deploy in the middle. And then it was just like, it's like, oh, you could just charge me with all the foreign's company and do what you hope. Like it's just one of those ones. But and then went out on the Saturday night as well, but I didn't go particularly hard because I was still suffering. But it was basically a my victory lap kind of social tournament, and so the gaming aspect of it, I don't really remember much of it if I'm being perfectly honest. The only game I was motivated for was the very last game because James Gilray, who I don't know if people know, like Scottish guy, basically told me, he was like, oh, I really need to win this game because like it will mean that I'll win the Northern League, and like we like winding Gilway up, so that suddenly motivated me more than anything. Like I had done the whole entire weekend to suddenly win the game, and then I smashed him. But yeah, so that summed up my Stirling really.
Nice. That's not too bad. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try and be fancy here.
Ooh.
All right, I'm going to try and put the thing, bam, up on the screen. Look at that. So people can actually see that this is like an official thing. Like there's a thing and everything. for the GBHL.
Calm down with those descriptive words.
I am not good at English. So there you are up the top. Ali King.
Yeah.
So this region thing, we mentioned it a few times.
Yeah.
So when you join the GBHL, you get assigned a region based on where you live, essentially. But it's where your first tournament is, really, isn't it? You end up being.
So generally it's just assumed your first tournament will be your region, and then if it's not correct, like for some, like say you went to the Warhammer GT as your first event, you can then just message on the Facebook page, and then it will just get changed to...
I was unassigned for a little while, and then I went to Lord of the Imps and got put into the Central region. And I had to message and get changed to Southern.
So we brought in the rule because loads of people weren't like telling like the TOs that it was their first event and they need a region assigned. So we just changed it to it's assumed it's your first tournament unless we hear otherwise.
And then what else? What else is on here? So you've got your 5 best scores on the top here, but obviously only 4 of them actually count for anything. So we're talking about hundreds and 80s. So the 100 pointers are you get 100 points for winning the event. The 80s, you get 80 points for winning the event. So if you win an 80, it's like coming 5th or 6th at a big 100 pointer, basically, in terms of points. So you can see here that Ali King has won 1, 2, 3 big events and came second in the one event. When that's it, I don't care about the rest. Basically,
there's 5 events in, I think, or whatever, and that was my or 500 point events in, and that was my result. Genuinely, my last 6 events or whatever that I went to, I may as well have not done, and it would have had no impact on my results or the league, because I didn't even have any like really significant games to stop the others winning events. It was just literally, I just did it in the first half.
Just gonna scroll down a little bit. There he is. My name is wrong on this spreadsheet, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. There's an N in the middle of it. Not sure why that's there. Yeah, not sure why that's there.
It's because we don't like you. No,
yeah, fair enough. So there's my 80 win, and then a few just kind of like somewhere in the middle places, basically. But yeah, so 36 I ended up.
That's out of how many people did? I know we had about 500 people compete in the league this season. But in terms of people who did actually 4 events.
So there's 550 officially got a score there. Oh no, not 550. Is it 447 is the bottom rank? But yeah.
Oh, they're all tied. So
who went to 4 events or so? I think it's like the top. Yeah, about here somewhere. That's where people start going. So somewhere in the region of like 100 seems to be the 3 events, and then 4 events is like 70, 60. So it's not bad.
Finished top half of players who went to enough events to.
Yeah, I'll take that in my first time. Yeah,
and a lot of those were 80s as well, rather than hundreds. So you weren't even like.
I only went to 200s, I think. I had Into the West and Lord of the Imps. My only hundreds, I think. But yeah, there's here. Look, literally 1, 2, 3 places above me. Scandalous.
He did go to 6 events, though, by the looks of it.
Yeah, he went to less events, so fair play to him.
Oh, I thought you went to less.
No, I went to 7. Yeah.
So actually, it's even worse. You're just.
But one of them is that one I don't remember it being. It
doesn't count if you don't remember it. Yeah.
It's like the very first one of mine. It's like a 20-pointer there. Bam. Way back in like, I don't remember that. Don't remember that existing. We mentioned them a few times on here, but there's this regions ranking thing, which is where the things get put into. So this is the Southern one, which comes first because we're the best, obviously, in the Southern, and it's all of the events that take place in the South. Basically count for the Southern League, right? So it's kind of like a local thing.
Yeah. So South goes from like Bristol to London, and sort of if you just draw a line, basically any sort of the events around that.
That's what these ones are on the top here. So you got Cardiff, Bristol, London, Southampton.
No. What is that one?
Between London and London. What's that? Bristol, Cardiff. Bedford. That be? What is SA? I don't know.
I think that's I think that's another one in London. I think it was run by. I've gone and forgotten his name. Zolt or.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm impressed that I remembered that much, to be honest, basically.
That's all right. But yeah, that's where that is. It's quite good because it's a different group of people. I actually ended up really low on that. Oh, that's a shame.
You beat my brother. No.
I did. Yeah, but he's a scrub. I beat him in the big thing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because your season things there as well. Yeah. Beat him comfortably in the big thing. But,
the top 3 get prizes in this, which actually, if you look between 3rd, 4th, and 5th, like it's ridiculously close.
Yeah.
Because it's basically 0.3 between the 3 of them.
I feel like that's upsetting. Why is Clubby in 3rd? That's not where he belongs.
No, but it was funny because it squeezed Eden's out of the top 3 for the first time in the Southern League.
Is that the first time ever? Is it?
Well, it's only the second time we've ever had it, but
okay. It sounds more dramatic.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then they also have on here the best newcomer award, which is great because that's the top 3 scores as well, and you can see how comfortably Rowan ended up
in the end.
That one. In the end, yeah, it was quite tight for a lot.
He won the last 2 GBHL 100s, but until that point, he was actually behind Ryan.
Yeah. But that's quite cool. And then they've got your best painted ones, where obviously Scott won that one in the end.
On the tiebreak.
On the tiebreak, which was actually winning events as well, or like placing well.
It was your standing in the league was the tiebreaker, which is quite funny because there's a bit of a scramble in Sterling when they had to try and work out. Basically, I got pulled over to tell them what the tiebreaker was because Mike Hands won the last most sporting in Sterling, which suddenly put him tied. And so we had to go into what we'd actually written in the GBHL rules because no one really knew.
No, but Scott's a pretty solid player. I've played him a couple of times actually. It's quite nice.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he's just gotten engaged as well.
Has he?
Yeah. So congratulations, Scott, if you watch this.
Yeah. He has seen some of them because he told me that one of my armies was pretty and I liked it.
Scott, if you're watching, let me know. / let Tom know.
Put it in the comments. Yeah. And then we've also got the most sporting ones, which is quite cool. It's nice for that keep track of that.
Yeah, Harry Moore's won that 2 years in a row now.
Has he?
Yeah.
Oh.
Friend. Yeah, basically whenever that award gets given out, it's basically to a chorus of friend.
Friend. But there's loads of people who've won, which is quite nice.
Yeah. You should have one, shouldn't you? Or did you not get most?
I didn't win any most sportings.
You just got voted as a sporting.
I just got votes, yeah. Yeah, I think it was five TPs for a thing. So that was using their VP differential was your point score. So when I was winning games like 12-0, I got 20 something points for that because it's based off of 10 and then up.
Oh yeah, that's the system.
And then you got 5 extra points for each most sporting vote you got. So by getting 2, it counted as another kind of 12-0 win. So I think on the score thing, it counted as having 4 12-0 wins out of 4 games, which was but I beat Clubby by 2 points in the end on the score.
So you're only sporting when it makes a difference to your tournament place.
I didn't know it did until the end because I was
that's what they all say.
Well, they told us he told us the pod winners at the time, but then didn't tell us the overall winner because he had to go and work it out. So I assumed I'd come 3rd because he said what Clubby had got. Because Clubby had got 69 points. So I was oh, nice. And I worked out, I was like, oh, I haven't got that many. Oh, no. And then they put it up and I'd won. I was like, oh, that's a surprise. But yeah. So overall, the league went fairly well for you in the end.
Yeah. It was really weird, actually, the second half of the season, because just the fact that I didn't need to play competitively, even though I was going for the league. It was meaning that I was just literally playing and I wasn't playing that hard. In terms of, at War, for example, I was playing on the Lake Town board and against Jason Mountain. It was I decided I want to call it Deep Water, even though it gave me a massive disadvantage because I thought it'd be a funnier game and stuff like that. And it's kind of things like that. Like, I don't know whether I would do if I was actually going, I need to like podium at this event, like, because Jason was perfectly happy like with calling it ice, and so was the TO and so on. I was like, oh no, we never play on boards like this, and we never say it's Deep Water. It'd be funnier for me to drown my own orcs, which did happen.
I've got a couple more like quick fire questions.
More questions.
Yeah, more questions. So when you're playing competitively, do you focus more on gaining VPs yourself or denying your opponent's VPs?
Depends.
Okay.
Genuinely, because things that people won't pay attention to unless if you're thinking about is depends on what the tiebreaker is.
That's yeah.
So some events have VP diff, some events have VP scored, there has been events before which has been VPs conceded as the first tiebreaker. So that can impact what you're doing. And also major minors, like at war, you'd want to score more so you can get the major victory because that significantly helps. But yeah, no, it kind of comes down to the rules pack. And yeah, so
that was my theory as well. It's the same answer was what I was going to give, because like that those two ones in London where it's the VP differential was to how many TPs you get. My whole thing was like, I'm just going to rack the score up and hope you can't keep up with me.
Yeah.
And hope I win 10-12-0 because that's what matters. Not winning 4-0 is basically a draw. It's no point.
Yeah.
So I do want to try. So we do a lot of like small, like casual events, like 10 people locally, just to like get everyone together. It's more of a gaming day, and I want to try making one where it's VPs scored and one where it's VPs conceded as a tiebreakers, and see how people play it differently.
Yeah. So usually, you're historically like it's only people in the sort of top, like say bracket, like who are aware and thinking about that. Which is why sometimes when event rule packs, like sometimes like they end up accidentally using the different tiebreaker, like most people don't care because they're just sort of like, I win the game, I lose the game. But like it does make a difference actually sometimes for how people have played.
I remember there was one we went to which was like a casual event, in theory fairly locally, but it wasn't like our locally, and the VP, the tiebreaker they were using at the event was slightly different to the one they said. So they said it was going to be major minor, but the scoring for major minor was slightly different at the event to what it was. So I'd finished and I thought I had a major win, and then I didn't get a major win, and I was like, oh, what was the point of me messing around for the last two turns making sure I got that? I was like, it was mildly, but yeah, it happens, doesn't it? Lee wants to know, should Paralyze be on a 4+, or should it be harder to cast?
I think it's fine.
Yeah, that's what I told him too, but he's scared of it, so it's all right.
So he shouldn't, as a dwarf player, be scared of it. Because genuinely, so Angmar so dwarves are a terrible matchup for Angmar because so I played it at Sterling and it was one of my biggest and easiest wins because I don't rely on my dwarf heroes to do the killing. It's basically my troops are so much better than the Angmar troops anyway, and they don't normally actually have that significant numbers.
And your courage is quite good.
Yeah, that you can literally just, your troops can blend them, and like, so your heroes you can just save for like one turn when you need them and that, and it's just sort of like, so yeah, for dwarves it doesn't really matter too much. I have a whole thing, I think people depend on their heroes more than they should do. It's sort of like if people look at a lot of my lists, they rarely have hero dominant, or if I have a big hero, they have to be able to support while not active as well. So
that's one of my things that I've moved to towards the end of the year, like especially with Goblin Town and Fiefdoms, which have been my two main ones towards the end of the year. My Fiefdoms guys, like none of my heroes touch combat until fairly near the end of the game. We would just sit behind the lines, like the troops are so good, I'll just
you don't need to, and it's always more effective to have those guys in reserve for when like a bit of the line breaks or something goes wrong, and then you can suddenly go, oh cool, Imrahil, you can go smash those guys up. And
I was playing Scott at War and used up Suladan's mic because Suladan was in combat and Imrahil wasn't, and then got priority, spread my lines, Imrahil went in, dropped Suladan, bam. It's just happy days.
You tend to get, I was gonna say you get the two types of lists and players. You get the kind of us in that sort of bracket, and then you get the what I call the enabler list, which is sort of like Jasmine Tetley is quite good at this, where she takes like Lady of Light and all of this stuff to make sure you can't shut down those big heroes, and that they will be successful every time. But yeah,
and things like the Helm Hammer hand lists, where they're just like, here is my one massive hero, he's going to win me the game.
Yeah, and he often doesn't. Like,
yeah.
But it's really easy to actually contain big heroes when you know, like, is they going, okay, they may kill 2 or 3 guys a turn, but you can pretty much limit that and then go win everything else.
I find they're the kind of thing that tends to get you to like 3 and 1 in a small event, or like 4 and 2.
I call it a 4 and 2. Sort of like there will be 1 or 2 games where dice just screw you, and it really hurts when you're relying on one model.
It's like that Balrog Legion, where it's like you win a lot of games just because it's that Legion, but then he'll just not show up for a game and you just capitulate. It's my LSR at Lordience. He turned up for a lot of games, and then one day he rolled a 1 heroic strike and got killed by Ugluck, and then that was it. GG, basically. Yeah. Is there anything that you think is a standout for being too competitive, or the opposite?
I wouldn't say too competitive. What I will say is negative play experience.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm hesitant to bring it up because it gets talked so much about it at the moment.
All the Vanquishers!
So the Vanquishers, like, it's not that they're going to go win every event, and they haven't, like, so far. And same with, like, the Black Riders. It's the fact that you're kind of not playing a game. Like, as in, it's such a... If someone's using it well, which, to be fair, if you're taking an army to a tournament, I'd expect you to, like, try and use it well. It's such a, like, just one person going, oh, I'm on the floor. And up, oh, I'm on the floor. And
any of these, like, super skew lists, I think like that. So, like, the Black Riders, the these Faramir's Rangers, when they were a thing, was just so... I'm going to sit here and shoot you, and you're going to hope you make it across here.
It stops you both playing a game, and once you do that, it's kind of like, well, there's no point me being here. Like, I may win it, but I'm basically just waiting for you to have a bad turn of luck, and then being in the right position to pounce you on you, or get in the right scenario or board or whatever. Which, I don't like that. It also, for me, like, I kind of got a blog article possibly coming out on the GBHL website in the new year, vaguely talking about this, but it also takes some of the fun away from taking a theme list. So, like, if someone took the White Council a year ago, it's there going, oh, that's cool. Like, obviously they're not going particularly competitive, and they're just doing it because they want to take the White Council. Now, if I play someone taking the White Council, my initial reaction is, like, this is just going to be horrible. And that guy's intentions may not be that, but it's just like, now I've got this whole perception because they've been buffed so much and skewed the game in ways that the game isn't normally allowed to be played.
It's like the breaking the Fellowship Legion's done the same thing to them. They used to be a thing where you turn up and go, you brought the Fellowship, that's fun. And now it's, oh god, there's so many things, and they're actually quite good. And
breaking the Fellowship, I think, just about get past me, because you still playing. I generally don't like playing all hero armies anyway, because it's not really like the best example of SPG in my opinion. But like, it kind of gets by because it sort of doesn't quite have all the gimmicks that, like, Black Riders but those lists is kind of like, I know why they exist, but I don't think they need to exist, and I think they have more of a negative impact than actually positive. But hey ho.
And what armies are just like the worst army in the game and should never ever exist on table?
In terms of actually playability, or elves. Just stupid elves. Hate elves. Like, shouldn't exist. Elves are only there to... No, actually, I do think elves should exist so I can kill them. But no, if I was to give an actual answer, I think all armies kind of deserve to exist to a certain extent, but Sharky's Rogues is obviously rubbish.
The Men of the West is awful as well.
Oh yeah, well, that Legion is literally going, hi, do you want to take an army which you could take anyway, but without any of the positives? Yeah, no, that Legion's stupid. But thing is, I'm not offended by any of those existing. I think bad lists and Legions don't actually offend anyone, and the only lists which are actually exceptionally bad are ones which don't have a actual army. It's like Sharky's Rogues, where it's like you've got that and just a bunch of guys, or like Woses, which I know like can be good at low points, but it's sort of like they're not actual armies; they're more like allied contingents.
Yeah, like Army of the Dead, where it's just
Yeah,
the king and a million ghosts. When you start to play at high points without bringing in Aragorn and that.
yeah,
On that topic as well, Spider Queen.
yeah.
Are we content with her as a hero of valor?
Yeah, shall I tell you the way that I would actually change her?
Yeah.
So I would like, for me, you make the broodlings have to stay within a 12-inch range,
Don't do that.
or basically because the the stupid thing with Spider Queen and Broodling is like the fact, especially like saying Recon, you can move up and then just go spawn, and then the broodlings move off, and it's like suddenly you got a 3-0 win. It's just the kind of gimmicks you can do and play with it, which is the issue with the Spider Queen. But I think if you solve that, then half of her issues are solved, because it is a skillful model to use, because she can die really easily if you misplay her.
She is incredibly rewarding to play well as well. Like,
yeah,
because boy does she reward you for doing some cool things, and you can do some really cool things with her. But I mean that was Lee just because he really doesn't like her.
yeah, which I kind of get. But I think if you sort of nerf the broodlings part of it a little bit, like then she's probably solved.
Yeah, I'd like to see them. Well, I wouldn't like to, but I feel like if they couldn't, maybe they couldn't count for recon.
Yeah,
they couldn't
I
destroy
honestly do
objectives
think
or
that
something.
should be a thing. Is like you can only like so the dismounting the warg and then getting double points for like recon and that. I don't think should be a thing.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, so that would work as well.
And yeah, because I use them to like destroy the supplies quite a lot. Where I'm like, well, she's going to move over here, it's going to spawn a thing, and that's going to tag it while she takes the dude who's guarding
she's
it.
just so good at so many of the objective scenarios now.
Yeah.
It becomes like
I love
kind of
her.
a bit ridiculous, but yeah.
And then I think that's about everything really. Next year, GBHL's back.
Yeah.
Are you going to win it?
Probably not. So in honesty, like I'm at a weird stage now, because I've kind of like achieved if like my goal. Like so originally my goal actually coming into the season that's just gone, it was to podium, because as pointed out earlier, like I'd never quite been able to podium. I'd been like top 5 a couple of times, but I'd not done enough events to podium. And then when I actually won it, I was like, oh okay, so I kind of overachieved on what my actual goal was. But no, it's one of those ones. So I'll still do events next year, but I may only do 5 or 6. But I'm going to be doing more focus on like squash actually and competing, because I kind of put that on the sideline for this year to do wargame stuff. But I'm also fully aware I'll go to say like Into the West and like a couple other like the GT I've got a ticket for as well. If I podium and do well at those, I'll get sucked straight back into like going for it again. But my intention at the moment isn't to go as for the league in the same way that I did this year.
Who is going to win the league?
So I think next year's actually going to be the most competitive season of the league in terms of like the most open, because we've got all the new players who were sort of learning the trade, as it were, this season, and then you've got all the returning like old players, so like who weren't necessarily competing as much this season, or like weren't able to go as hard, and like there's a lot more people I know who seem to be like motivated to go for it next year, and it's sort of like they're going, I'm not sure. Like you can always say like Jay will probably do well. I mean, just because like even if he says he's not going for the league, he's going for the league. If then you've also got like World Champion, if he can compete, which he hasn't been able to this season because he runs events from 7th City Wargaming now, but he may be able to compete a bit more. Jasmine said that I think Jasmine's got the same sort of opinion as me, in the sense that she's not going for it next year as much, but she may get dragged back into it.
Yeah, if you accidentally start doing well.
Yeah, Dave Farmer probably will end up going for it a bit if he can. But you've got Ryan Gregory, who's runner-up for Best Newcomer this year, who I reckon will do quite well at future events because he's learning pretty quick. And there's quite a lot. I don't know. I want and Ed Bull and stuff, and there's quite a few returning faces. So
yeah, it's like a little group of like Rowan, Ryan, and Aaron have all finished the league like really strong at the end of this year.
Aaron's going for it next year, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, the safe money is just to say Jay, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the coward approach, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go with... I'm actually going to say Will Champion if he competes, because I think because he couldn't compete this year, and I think he'll have the bit between his teeth. And you need a bit more experience usually than I think Ryan and some of the new guys do to win the league, because it's going across the whole season. So,
especially if we get a whole season in.
Yeah.
Rather than like a fragmented kind of few events here and there. Because I think that was the thing this year, like looking back on some previous years, the kind of top 5 or 6 normally end up going to quite a few more events than they did this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was quite obvious, I think, looking back at it.
So I'm going to take not the full cheat and say Jay, but the little cheat and say Will if he competes.
Yeah. I'm going to say Rowan. So there.
See, I know Rowan isn't really allowed to compete next year according to his missus. He used up all his goodwill to win Best Newcomer, but it's one of those things you never really know. Like going into it, you can kind of tell at least part of the group at the sort of 3-month mark, and then when you get to September, you can get some of the people who suddenly win like a couple of events and then suddenly chucked into it as well. But yeah, I think it is going to be the most open for a while next year.
Nice. Looking forward to it. And then we're obviously hosting some events next year. So that'll be good. They're only 80, like we've got an 80 and trying to get a second one in towards the end of the year as well. And then hopefully 2023 might get 100 in.
Yeah.
If we're allowed.
I mean, you're probably allowed one next year, if you wanted.
But I'm scared of them. I don't know the rules.
To be fair, they're actually just as easy to run as 80s in my opinion. But yeah, I've got my event as well coming back next year after a COVID hiatus.
Nice. Is that did you do one in Preston?
No, Winchester.
Winchester.
Down south.
That's
City
near
of
us.
Kings.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Why did I have Preston in my head? That's nowhere near where you live.
No, it's like 4 hours away.
Yeah. What are we talking about Preston for? Nice. Well, thanks for hanging out for a bit. Well, it's gone quite a while, hasn't it? Oh dear. Yeah. Sorry, mate. Hope you have nothing better to do. Yeah,
I never have anything better to do.
To be fair, if Lee was here, we've been on for another hour at least. So
I've got a private session with Lee, booked in, everything.
Yeah, I know you have your weekly coaching chats where you tell him how to beat me. He tells you what list I'm working on this week, and you tell him exactly how to beat him.
No, actually, how it goes is what do you think of this? It's yeah, it's fine. It's cool. I just needed someone to tell me that. Basically, just is reassuring, you're not being an idiot. It's fine, Lee.
That's what he's become to me. So one of the things we were saying about from different games is in X-Wing, which is what he plays quite a lot. They're always looking at their outs and how they the little minutiae of how they actually finish the games, because that's what matters. And I often get towards the end of the game and go, well, I've won, right? And then he goes, actually, I can do this, this, and this and still win. I'm like, oh, you can. Right. So now I'm starting to get the end, those tiny little things at the end, which is all coming from him, which is quite nice. So that's quite cool. Whereas the rest of it, it's all me. It's all right. But yeah, no, we're good. Hopefully see a few events next year, if I can get out. But I might not because of work. I'm trying to go into the West because that's early January, isn't it? So
late January.
Yeah, but early January, early year. So hopefully I shouldn't have too much commitments going on. It might be my only one, but we'll see.
And then you'll win it, and then you'll be like, "Oh!"
I assure you, I will not.
But we'll have this conversation again after you do.
I won't. I will be taking Golden Town and just having a laugh.
Actually,
yeah,
I was gonna say like before, one of my highlights of the year was like when we were into the West was, when we were having the meal,
yeah,
and then I was we were talking about like your Woes' Pass of the Druid and Legion, and I was
yeah.
explaining why it doesn't really work at 450 points. You're like, nah, like you're wrong. And then like you come up to me like day 2 with like a sad face and go, yeah, I hate you. It did exactly what you said, and like all the Woes died, and then I broke and lost the game.
What's really irritating is that's the one I took to Lair and Dragon and didn't lose a game with, and then took it to Into the West and it just went terribly. Which I think is saying what we are saying earlier. It's like it can beat average people, and then when the good people come out, it was like, oh, there's a really easy weakness in this. It's awful. Yeah, no, it'd be Goblin Town and a surprise good army, I think.
That whole meal actually was probably the highlight of all my year. It was it was quite good fun riffing into Lee for being a terrible human being.
I really enjoyed that. Yeah, Into the West was generally quite a good time. If I had done better in the event, I think it'd been a really good weekend. But I got a bit sulky.
Competitive. Yeah,
it's just when you lose like a couple and you're like, I can't lose anymore because I did hit.
Yeah,
it wasn't bottom table, but I hit second bottom table and I knew it, and I was like, oh god, this is.
I do remember talking to you at the weekend, being like, oh. Where's Tom? I was like, he's down there. Like,
I was using my Corsairs, and at one point, my crossbows hadn't wounded anything for 2.5 games, and I had 10 crossbows in lists.
Yeah.
Like, this is ridiculous. And then I played some guy who had like max dwarf bowman in his list for some reason, and it was on recon, and I just slaughtered him. I was like, right, we're back. And then we were not.
Just gotta hang in until it does.
Yeah.
The other funny thing I remember about that meal is like I was sitting opposite Curtis, but I realised that I'd never been introduced to him, and like we were talking the whole entire evening and just laughing and stuff like that. And I was just there going like, at one point he was like, I've got no fucking idea what Curtis's name is.
Oh, we made it through the whole thing until you swore.
Oh, we can cut that bit right then.
I don't edit anything. It's fine. Raw and uncut this.
But by the time I started watching it, it would go past the watershed anyway with how long.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be all right. That's happened a few times. So he was in my pool at Borodor, and I had no idea who he was, but he's seen a few YouTube stuff. So he came over and was chatting because he saw I was on my own. And we're chatting like most of the day, and he got towards the very end of the day. I was like, God, I don't know who this guy is. And then the pairings came up, and I was playing against him in the last game. And I was like, who's Curtis? And I was like, it's that guy. There he is.
I don't know whether like you've had it quite often. I do now because like I've become a big name, and sort of done a lot of the YouTube stuff. But like sort of the amount, do you get a lot of people coming up to you at events who know who you are, and you're like they're going, I'm pretty sure I've never met you in my life, but I can't be 100% sure.
Not a lot, but some. More than I ever thought would. Yeah. So Borodor was our the first one after we started like YouTube and stuff, and there was a few. And then the LGT was probably the biggest one because we've got all our little branded t-shirts and stuff that was walking around in. And there was a squad, like there was a few of us there. And that was the first one, people coming up to us and just like, oh, I love that, I like that. And we're like, oh, it's a bit awkward, isn't it?
Yeah. So my favourite one of those, so it was at Imps. I had a couple of people come up to me, just chat to me about the Guardians stuff and all that. But my last game was actually against Ryan Gregory, who obviously like then started competing for Best Newcomer. But did the whole introduction, go, oh, I'm Alistair, like, and he goes, are you the Alistair?
Yeah.
And just like, well, it depends.
Not the Alistair.
Yeah, but just the way he phrased it.
It was really, my favourite one was I was playing against someone at, I can't remember what it was, might have been Into the West or something, and it was Lords of the Imps, and we got like most, no it wasn't, it was Reading because it was the very last one. And I got most of the way through the game, and then because I've got branded dice and everything now, I'm like, and then he was like, what is this atomic cards thing that's just written on everything you own? I was like, well, I'll explain. He's like, oh, I've never heard of you. I really enjoyed that. If you are at an event, do come chat, preferably not in the middle of the game, because someone has done that and it's a bit annoying.
Yeah,
but like, what?
Sorry about that.
No, it was someone, and we were literally like, I was trying to work out how to do something. And he came up and like, I had a chat and it's like, that's great, but I can see my opponent's annoyed because I'm taking up time. And we did go to time in that game, and it was a bit like, but yeah, at lunch breaks and stuff, come and chat. We do like talking to people.
Make sure you actually introduce yourself though.
Because, yeah, do say who you are.
Like,
and also the other thing people don't think about: say what your YouTube name is.
Yeah.
Because there's some people who use different names on their YouTube.
God, I hate this on Discord. Like,
I don't know who anyone is.
Yeah, so like my name on Discord is like Ali 1994, whatever. And there's there going, so everyone knows it's me. Amount of times that I've seen people chatting to other people and not realizing they actually know who each other are or stuff like that. And it's just like, I've got no idea. Like,
mine's just Tom. Yeah. Actually, no, it's not. It's Atomic Tom, isn't it?
That was the thing. Actually, when Lee first joined the Guardians Discord chat, I didn't know it was Lee.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone did. But yeah.
Bless him. Yeah, no, I don't like it. And someone's changed all the nicknames in our local group chat to be like something like related to like an army and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's great, but I don't know who anyone is now. Yeah. And I have to click on their pictures every time. It's like, who is it? And it's just a bit irritating sometimes. But yeah, no, if you are, come chat to us. We like making friends. It's nice.
I do autographs. £5 a pop.
Lee's got so many in his house. Just...
I've actually autographed his house. I got a giant pen and just went.
just send him a card that says like to Henry and sign it. He'd love that. Yeah. But yeah, cool. We should probably wrap this up. But thanks for popping by. Have you got anything to plug while you're here?
I suppose one, like, I should plug the league, which we already have, and the Guardians show, I think what we call it. So Guardians of Wiltshire, which is basically a bit like this, but we kind of vaguely try and like have topics.
You have topics and like little like weekly things. So we want to this year. We want to make it like an actual like thing, which is why I was like, oh, let's do some like in-depth interviews and stuff. Whereas in the past it's always just been like us chatting about like what happened that week. Whereas now I want to get like do a regular thing and have like recurring things on it and give it a name. Is one. Whereas no, it's just like
the Guardian show didn't have a name like for ages, and then I think Dewey just like put that in as the title. But we've been on hiatus while Dewey like inconveniently decided to have a baby. Like, but we will be returning in the new year for season 2. I'm going to call it.
Well, that is why Lee's not here. If anyone's wondering, the same problem. But yeah, so I'm thinking we're just going to be the Atomic Cast at the moment, and then if anyone's got a catchier, wittier name, let us know. But everything I keep thinking of is already taken of. Yeah. That's the annoying thing. I was like,
Atomic Cast, like, I think works as well.
Yeah.
I'd stick with that. Don't overthink it. Go with it.
Sound. When this goes up, it might be called Atomic Cast 1. This might be the very first. We're going to lead with this and see what happens.
So if it tanks, it's all my fault.
If it tanks, it's all your fault. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to know that. I like ruining things as much as I like winning them.
So you do like to ruin other people's VPs.
Oh,
that's it. Yeah. Oh, it's one of my favourites. I'm just going to do this just to deny you that. All right, lovely. Thank you for staying by, and might see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe and like the thing, and I'll put a link to the GBHL website and all that stuff.
Cool.
Bye.